for every job opening, there are there is a flood of applicants, and we are getting job applications in excess of like 500 resumes for every job opening. I've seen public schooling, I've seen private schooling, and I would prefer private schooling over public schooling. The waiting time which you are talking about in hospitals, we have the similar situation, and I've seen similar situation in Singapore, and I've seen similar situation in here. That the way you meant describe how they prioritize is very similar here. But being referred to specialist is not that difficult. So secondary care in Australia is lacking. Secondary healthcare is lacking. So if you so that's why people, almost everyone in I know, they have private health insurance.
Hello, guys. Thanks for tuning in again. So, today I have a friend of mine, Ismail, and the reason I have him on the podcast is because I would want to explore on this podcast differences or benefits or pros and cons of moving to Australia versus Canada. So, I have a lot of experience with regards to moving to Canada, and I propose or share a lot of benefits and pros and cons and everything on my channel in any case. But there is another country which is also very much immigrant friendly. There is, and when I say immigrant friendly, it's also because they have a very robust immigration system, just like Canada. They take a lot of immigrants every year, and Ismail is one of those immigrants who moved to Australia. So I was like, how about we call in Ismail here as well, and both me and Ismail share some experiences, the pros and cons with regards to our move to Australia and Canada, and for people like you who are listening in to decide which is the right choice. Now, we may not be able to cover all information, we may not have the entire or complete information, but I think this would be good enough for you to kind of know what questions to ask, which areas to start looking in during your research when you're choosing between Canada and Australia. Anyways, I think I've spoken a lot, but let me pass it on to Ismail. And Ismail, if you can introduce yourself first, what is your background? When did you move to Australia? And then I have certain areas, certain topics that we can delve into more.
Beros, thank you for inviting me to this discussion. My name is Ismail. I am from Pakistan, and I'm basically an electrical engineer by qualification. I'm from Karachi. I graduated in 2003 uh, from NAD University, and then I worked in Pakistan for 1 year, then followed by working in Saudi for 2 years, followed by working in Singapore for 10 years, and then uh, now I'm in Australia for around 8 years. So when I was in Singapore, after I had kids, there came a point that I had to, decide to move on and explore other opportunities. So there were a few options at that point of time: Canada, Australia, even US, because I have some relatives in US. So that was also, one of the options. But I eventually decided to move on to Australia. At that point of time, weather, I heard about I had heard about like the weather in Canada is, is on the the temperature is on the lower side, is very extreme. Some of my relatives are who are there, they gave some feedback that they are looking for weather to be favorable to go out and uh, spend time with the family in outdoors. So weather was one of the key uh, aspect at that point of time. Plus, at that Australia was there were relevant job opportunities related to my field of working, and I had so and at that point of time, what was happening, that my social circle, which was in Singapore, they were slowly moving to Australia. So my close friends who were in Singapore, they had moved to Australia already, and they were giving me continuously, they were giving me like very positive feedback. So that was an encouragement, and actually that helped me when I landed in Australia. Though that was a support, so I had a like a support base here already. and that helped me a lot when I was settling here. So
Make
yeah. So these were some of the
make
key factors that played a role in making me to decide, where to head to after Singapore.
Makes sense. Ismail, I usually say when people ask me where to move, I say there are essentially two factors, in my opinion, and you can disagree, and we're happy to debate that. And that's why we are here to agree and disagree and debate. One is economics, which is wherever you can find a good job. Like if I am able to find a $50,000 job in Australia and $100,000 job in Canada, Canada will rank over Australia for my decision. And second is social circle, which is when you are moving to a country, I think it's very important for you to know someone there who can guide you through things, because you're leaving your home country, you're moving to a completely new place, and you want to establish yourself in a place where you can find a social circle and all. And I think you mentioned both of them, which is you were able to find better opportunities, better jobs in Australia, and plus you also mentioned that you had friends who were moving to Australia as well. But you also mentioned about the weather, and I understand the piece on the weather. Let me defend Canada for a bit. I know it's difficult to defend on weather with regards to Canada. The only thing I would say is while it is very cold, the temperatures drop to minus 20 degrees Celsius. From system and process point of view or technology point of view, as long as you are within your house, from your house you move into the car, you will not feel anything. Like I remember, so I'm from a very cold place in Pakistan, which is Quetta. And in Quetta, when you would wake up in the winters in the morning, it would be difficult to leave your bed because it would be so chilling. You have to turn on the heater first, let the room warm up first. Even if you have to use the washroom for a shower or anything, you have to turn on a heater in the washroom and all. But that has never been a challenge in Canada, because in Canada it's all centrally heated. So I never felt cold when I'm in home. If I have to leave for a place, I'll sit in my car. It gets heated as well. Sit in it, and then I can move where I have to move. I think the only challenge I found in Canada with regards to weather is when it snows, and it snows a lot, and then you'll find struggle with commuting to the workplace because there is so much snow. Traffic slows down, and a commute, which is let's say 10-minute commute, becomes a 1 hour commute. But it is just during the day or during the time when it's snowing. Otherwise, they'll come and they'll clean up the snow. However, I do understand that from fun point of view, like enjoyment point of view, you are kind of indoors, you're stuck indoors, and it is difficult to enjoy. But would love to know how have you found the weather in Australia? What have been the positives with regards to the weather that you have in Australia?
So, different states and different capital cities, the weather actually varies. So, I am in Sydney, in vicinity of Sydney, and so the weather. This is like I can say this is like a very sunny state, and the weather is sunny most part of the year. We have a lot like a coastline, and we have a lot of beaches. So for example, after I come back from work, it will be sunny outside, and like Sydney, I feel like the infrastructure is very family based. So within walking distance from your house, you'll find a park with some rides and etc etc. So you enjoy your day. After you finish work, you can go out, just walk to a park, uh, and you can your family, your kids, they can play outdoors, they can engage with other kids, and it actually boosts your mood. So you are not essentially stuck indoor in any part of the day. You can you enjoy your day. Kids make friends, they play outdoors, and there are a lot of public facilities we have, like near my place there are free tennis courts. You can just spend time with your friends playing tennis and basketball, soccer, whatever you are interested in. So generally the weather is very you know activity friendly.
Yeah.
That's the term I will use. And you can spend time outdoors at any part of the day you want. You can spend time with your kids, and the kids also enjoy the time when after their school. After their school they're not stuck at home. they can spend time outdoors if they want to. So I like Sydney weather. Sydney weather is actually the best weather as far as different capital cities of Australia are concerned. I have lived in Adelaide. It was very different from Sydney. Melbourne is also a bit different from Sydney. Melbourne is usually colder and a bit darker. Like there is not, the sunlight is not there for most part of the year. People wait for weather to improve to enjoy outdoors. So in even in Australia, there is a lot of variation in different capital cities of Australia. But Sydney weather, it's an ideal weather if you want to, spend outdoor time with your family after office hours.
Got it. Makes
So
sense.
yeah.
Makes sense. Ismail, let's jump into, so on weather. I think it would be very difficult for me to debate any further in favor of Canada. I think it's Australia takes a win, big win. Let's talk about the job market now. Um, what are your 2 cents or 3 cents on the job market in Australia, especially given the economic challenges that are across the globe, that different countries are seeing? And maybe let me talk about Canada first, and maybe then you can build on it and see how we can see Australia. In Canada, there are typically, I would say, three key sectors. One is oil and gas. Oil and gas is very volatile. So if you have experience in oil and gas, uh, that is one place you should be easy to find job, that is Canada. The second is telecom. So if you have a telecom background, that's another place, because telecom sector is very well established and big in Canada. And the third one, which is big, is banking. So I've seen people who are bankers, telecom, and oil and gas people. They don't struggle a lot to find jobs in Canada because the industry is huge, is mega, is big. In terms of GDP, if I have to compare Australia and Canada, I think they're pretty much similar in size of GDP. So economy size is similar. However, one benefit I see in Canada, which was back of my mind as well when I was moving to Canada, and I think I made use of it eventually, is that when you are in Australia, you are far away from the world. This is my opinion. You are just too far. Now, Canada is also far from where we come, like Middle East and South Asia. It is far. However, it is attached to the world's biggest economy, which is United States. So you, in some part, get access or enjoy the fruits of the US economy. And what I mean to say is, for instance, I know a lot of people who are based out of Canada but work for US companies. For someone like me who's worked in Canada, lived in Canada, got their citizenship, and was able to move to US, which was relatively easy because you have certain NAFTA agreements between Canada, US, and Mexico, and you can get benefit of that as well when you're applying for your work and all. So that is one thing, when friends ask me where to move, Australia and Canada, and I tell them economic size is probably same. These are the sectors, but you get benefit of being close to US, which you won't get in Australia. So you tell me, if someone has to reach out to you and say, I want to move to Australia, or maybe I'm choosing between Australia, Canada, what do you think? How is the job market in Australia? What would be your advice there?
Recently we had influx of migrants in Australia, and that has resulted in the ratio of vacancies available to the candidates available in the market is very skewed right now. So what I've been hearing, that for every job opening, there is a flood of applicants, and we are getting job applications in excess of like 500 resumes for every job opening. So right at this point of time, the job market, it's very tough, and for anyone trying to switch a job or anyone looking for a new job, it's very hard to crack the job market and get a new opportunity. So uh, uh, if anyone asks me, is it the best time to enter Australia job market, I'll say no, this is not a good time to enter, like start looking for a new job in Australia. And as far as the sorry. So as far
Mhm.
as the industries are concerned, Australia is essentially driven by a construction industry. The Australian economy is driven by construction industry plus the mining industry. These two are the main industries here. So government give rebates, and with the influx of the new migrants, they need places to live, and that drives the whole the construction industry. So there are construction related jobs, and like civil engineering and construction managers, etc. So that is one as like one area where you can you can have a better luck, and you may find a job. Mining industry, there are so like you mentioned that Canada benefits being closer to US. So Australia benefits being closer to China. And so Australian economy is very export based, and they export a lot of raw material to China, which drives Australian economy. Although you may hear in the news that the relationships are is not good, and but essentially Australian economy is very heavily dependent on China. And that export is driving the mining industry here. So if you go into mining industry, the life is tough. There are we call here FIFO jobs. FIFO, fly in fly out jobs. You fly into a remote location, you work there for some time, and then you fly out back to where your family is living. So that is one area where you can find a high paying but a tough job. And the third area is any profession related to medical industry. So if you're a doctor, or you support and maintain medical equipment, or if you are a technician, etc., etc. If you're linked to a medical industry, you there is always an option. You can find a job here. Plus, that will be a very high paying job. So health medical related professionals, they are the highest earners in Australia. So, for example, an engineering manager here in Australia uh, will get half of what a surgeon is getting, for example. So if you are a like if you're in a profession related to medical industry, Australia is a very good place for you to explore and move.
Nice, makes sense. So I would agree. So Canada is facing the same challenges, which is the influx of immigrants has been faster than the growth in the economy, and hence that has put challenge on the jobs that are available. So there are more candidates, and there are less jobs. So that is a similar challenge, I think, for Canada as well. And probably I would say that is a bigger challenge for Canada than probably it would be for Australia, because I was seeing the numbers, and the intake that Australia takes of immigrants is still lower than what Canada takes. I think Australian numbers were around 250,000 immigrants, something like that every year. Canada is as high as 450,000 immigrants. So that puts a lot of pressure. And I would also agree on the healthcare piece. So health, anyone who's related to a healthcare professional uh, is easy finds it easier to find a job in Canada, and even so much so that the Canadian immigration are preferring this occupation over any other. So if you have a healthcare background, you are much likely to get a Canadian immigration than any other background. Makes sense, and again, thank you for that. Now let's talk about the cost of living. So I can, and I've done a lot of assessment on this. The cost of living for a Canadian would be like a basic house, family of four, no vacation, no entertainment, just basic living is a minimum of 6,000 Canadian dollars, which would be 4,500 US dollars. So I personally think, or maybe if you want to take a range, it would be 4,000 US dollars to 4,500 US dollars. Anything less than that, you will be struggling. Like, it's possible, but I think it would be tough. So anyone coming to Canada should bear in mind that this is the kind of expense they should expect on a monthly basis as cost of living in Canada. how would it relate to, and again, the numbers that you and I are sharing are not data specific numbers, or they're not, these numbers are just basis my experience. The rental cost, the grocery cost, obviously you can play with these numbers. Like if you move further away from Toronto, the rent will significantly drop, but then your quality of life will also suffer because you will not find the social circle, the schoolings are not that good and all. So would love to know in Sydney, what are the numbers in your opinion? If someone calls you and says, what is the kind of expense I should expect on monthly basis in Sydney, what would be the number that you would share with them?
Yeah. So I'll speak based on my experience and my preferences. So my preference, we are like a small family of four. I have two sons, and my preference is to live essentially near a good school. So my decisions are based around good schooling. So based on and I'm in Sydney, and the cost of living actually varies from different from city to capital city. Rentals are there is a significant difference. For example, if I compare with Melbourne to Sydney, so based on my personal experience where I am living, I would say the monthly expense is around 4,000 to 5,000 Australian dollars a month.
That's pretty
Uh,
good.
yeah.
What would be a rental rent if you, in a good school district, a townhouse, what would be the rent for that, for a family of four? Now
Yeah.
it depends on the number of rooms and all, but average.
So at this point of time in Sydney, uh, uh, so I'll say $3,000 a month for 4 weeks. $3,000 for 4 weeks. If you
Yeah, that would
want,
be the same. That would be
yeah,
same in Canada as well.
yeah.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. And it has significantly gone up since in past 3 years. Probably it's the same case in Australia as well. Just how inflation has struck and made it difficult for it. Let's, on cost of living. Let me also call out, from taxes point of view. Here in Canada, we have federal taxes and then we have provincial taxes, which are on top. So someone who's earning around $100,000, you would expect them to pay somewhere around 30 to 35% tax. Um, what would be the tax for someone earning $100,000 roughly? Again, it doesn't have to be an accurate number, but a range that you can give just to have an idea.
So someone earning 100,000 Australian dollars will be paying. So like this fiscal year where which will be ending in June. So the tax rates what was around $23,000 approximately on $100,000 salary, and the next year there is a revision to the tax rate, so that will become like around $21,000 on $100,000 salary.
Okay, that is less, because in Canada the tax rate for $100,000 salary would be around 30%. If I look up the numbers as well on the web, and that someone was also telling me that the taxes are slightly lower in Australia as compared to what we would find in Canada, and maybe that also contributes to the cost of living being slightly lower in Australia. But you know what? One thing I did was I did search on the web income levels. So for a same job, and I don't know if you have heard different, but for a same job, same title, kind of same company, if you look on Glassdoor and look for salaries, you'll find more income in Canada versus Australia for the same role by around 5% to 10%, and so, which kind of compensates for the lower tax that you pay in Australia. So you pay lower tax, but then you earn less income. In Canada, you'll earn more income, but the cost of living is high and the taxes are high. um, Makes sense. You mentioned about schooling as well, so let's talk about schooling. How I assume you're sending your kids to public school. If so, no, you're not sending your kids to public school. They're going to private school. And so would love to know what's the difference between public and private school that you found, and why did you choose private over public?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, we have a public schooling system and a private schooling system here. And my kid, I have seen, I've sent my one of my sons to a public school in the primary for his primary years up till year 5, and then I switched to Islamic. school. So that was one of the preferences for me when I was making the decision. And so we wanted our kids to go to Islamic school, so I switched to Islamic private school. So public schooling, there's no fees because it's covered, is covered in the tax essentially. So when the kids are going to public school, it's fee free, scheme, and you don't have to pay any fees. But the public schooling, the teachers are burdened with managing a large number of students, and the teaching style is a bit different as well. I felt the assessment, the way they assess the students is very different from the private school. The way the feedback is given to parents is very different. The feedback of the So what I felt, that the verbal feedback from the teachers was different from what I was getting in writing. So the written performance reports were different from the verbal feedback, and I felt that they could focus more on academic activities. So private school, uh, which my kids are going to, the teachers are very focused. So the private school, in the education, the environment is focused around studies. In public school, focus is not on the specifically education side. They are engaged in a lot of other extracurricular activities, what I would say. So as like when the kids are growing up and slowly going into the secondary years, and where your marks are becoming more significant as the time is passing. So I want the teachers to give attention to how the kids are performing in the class, and the feedback which is providing to the parents should be accurate, and they should it should be like a swift feedback rather than a delayed one. So I found in private schools, it's more on like academic performance focused, and the feedback is accurate. And if your kid is lacking in certain area, you will get an immediate notification that your kid is not doing well, and you need to focus on a certain area. And so that allows the parent to calibrate, when your kid is not doing well in certain area, you can help him and support him, so that he can perform, for example, better in science, better in maths. Because as the year progresses, the marks in certain areas, certain subjects become important. So I've seen public schooling, I've seen private schooling, and I would prefer private schooling over public schooling.
Got it. One question: what would be the child to student ratio in public versus private? So, how many kids were there in one class for the teacher, and how many are there in private? Because for me, that is one way to also judge the benefit of private school over public, and this is just one of the many ways.
Mm. So in Australia, there is a like a legislation, and there is some requirements from the education system that you have to maintain a certain ratio. So, but I don't have that number on on top of my head. But public school try to abide by that ratio,
Got it.
and but in private schools sometimes you may find that the students and the teacher ratio, they are not like they struggle to maintain sometimes. You have more than required students in the class. So uh, yeah, but teachers tries to manage more kids in private schools. I have seen that because hiring teachers is a significant cost for the school, and sometimes some schools try to cut corners.
Hmm.
But at the exact ratio, if I can say, I think it's 30 students to one teacher.
Okay.
But I have to check what is the requirement.
Got it. Got it. I think Ismail, this is a big topic in itself, and maybe we connect some other day on another podcast to talk about private versus public schooling, especially with regards to Australia. I think there would be many people. I know for sure there are many people in Canada who have this question because they are also struggling with whether to move their kids to private school or not, and does the cost justify. And there are a bunch of reasons. One is the quality of education itself, but more than that, because the quality of education, yes, not education in itself, but also the activities, as you said. But also there are parents who are at times concerned, the kind of stuff that is part of the curriculum, they're not okay with it for different reasons, good or bad. I don't want to go into that, but that's a personal choice, and because of that they want to choose private school, and they don't have all the details. So someone like you who's gone through, who can talk good and bad about the private school, maybe we keep it for another day, this discussion, because I think this is a good one. Let's move onto healthcare, and let me start by Canada's healthcare first. And probably I'm beginning to realize there are more similarities than differences between the two countries. But let's keep going. In healthcare, the piece is healthcare is free in Canada. I assume it's the same in Australia as well. But it is very difficult for you to get any attention. Like if you want a general physician, it would be hard to find a general physician to begin with, a family doctor, because everyone is overloaded. But it took us some time to find a good family doctor. So that is one. Second is, when you go to a family doctor, they would be very hard pressed to recommend you to a specialist. Like you really have to pretend and act as if you're almost dying, and if you don't get a specialist, you'll just die there and then. Only then they may start thinking about recommending you to a specialist. Similarly, if you are to go to an emergency, unless or until it is life or death situation, they will put you on hold. So you may have a waiting time of 3 to 10 hours, or plus minus, if it's not a critical one. And at times it's like you're bleeding and there are people who are dying. So dying versus bleeding, they'll pick the dying person first, and you'll be low on the priority, and it may take you 10 hours. You can continue bleeding as long as you're not dying. You may not get the priority just because they're overloaded. How is the situation in Australia?
Yeah. So medical attending to a general physician is free, has been free until very recently. So there is an introduction of like a, they are calling a gap payment if you visit a general physician, but that is like $10 a visit. So it's still not very a significant amount. But as far as finding a GP to, for general consultation, it's not that difficult. I have, like, where I'm living, there are a lot of medical centers around my area, and if I want to go, even now I can go do a walk-in, and I can consult a general physician. So it's not such a big challenge right now. And and generally the general physicians, they are generally good. Like, I that's why we don't have any preference of any specific, going to a specific general physician. We generally, I've had good experiences with, when I've tried different GPs, and the experiences have been good. There are few exceptions, but very few. So finding a GP is not that challenging. Medical and the fees is almost negligible, because it's somehow covered in your tax. And but uh, the waiting time which you are talking about in hospitals, we have the similar situation, and I've seen similar situation in Singapore, and I've seen similar situation in here. That the way you describe how they prioritize is very similar here. But being referred to specialist is not that difficult. Doctors here, if GP has any doubt, they don't hesitate to refer you to a specialist. They will quickly, immediately refer you to a specialist. So recently, I had some, like in my family also, we've consulted a doctor, and doctor was doubtful. No, like, he was not 100% sure that this may be the case, but he was doubtful. So he even immediately gave us a referral letter to consult a specialist. So that's not a challenge here. The thing is, they are very strict as far as giving you antibiotics. So the doctors here, they don't give you antibiotics. And so which so, like, when I moved from, especially from Singapore, because Singapore is like very different. If you go there and you are coughing, they will give you heavy doses of antibiotics. And so when I came here, I did not realize what is happening. Why they're like, even you are feeling bad, you have congested chest and you're coughing, they don't give you antibiotic. But slowly I realized that the general like immunization, your immune system strength in Australia is very good, because they have controlled how they prescribe antibiotics. So what they will the doctors here will try to do, they will just send you back and say wait for a few days, and they will let the immune system in your body fight the disease. And that works here actually. You will sit at home, after 5 days you will feel better, because they have kept the immune system strength generally in Australian population very very well, just by controlling this antibiotic prescription. So
No,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's true for Canada as well. But rather, I know a few people coming from South Asia. They would come loaded with antibiotics, knowing that they won't be able to find antibiotics here, so they rather bring it from there. But
Mhm.
eventually, you'll run out of them. And you're right. I didn't like it initially as well because it will take me a day longer, and I'll be sick a day longer to recover. But it's perfectly fine because in the long run, I'm better off. The other piece I want to call out is the secondary health is just amazing in Canada. So, in case you end up, God forbid, admitted in the hospital, then the service is phenomenal. It is like you are as if you are in a five-star hotel, and the care and the physicians and everything is just amazing. It's just the primary care which is not up to the mark or at a good level.
So, Bhairav, sorry, I will add a comment here. So, when you mention secondary care, so secondary care in Australia is lacking. Secondary healthcare is lacking. So, so that's why people, almost everyone in I know, they have private health insurance. So, so in case they are in need of a secondary level of healthcare, you need to have private health insurance to get quick attention. Otherwise, if you are just relying on the public health system, you will have to wait for, even for like a small surgeries, people have to wait for easily a year or around there. So yeah, so yeah, that okay, that is something I did not know. And good to know that Canada has a good secondary level here healthcare system. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Let's move towards the last part that I want to discuss with you is social circle. So, how do you find this? How good is the social circle that you find in Australia? And I can talk about Canada. For me, we already have my wife's family in Canada, so it was good. But there are so many South Asians here, and more are coming in. So at times, it doesn't even feel like you are not in your own home country in terms of. Big festivities, celebrations, call it Eid, call it Diwali, call it whatever the celebrations are from South Asia, you see them happening here a lot. A lot of Pakistanis, a lot of Indians, Bangladeshis, China. So it's a melting pot, mix of immigrants, and I find it one of the best places on earth in terms of diversity and having you to get the feel of home. Like talking about halal restaurants, halal meat, talking about, as I said, festivities, you get all of it here. How is the scene in Australia with regards to social circle?
So it varies from capital city to capital city and from state to state. So I'm in New South Wales and in Sydney. So here we have a very large population of Arab origin Australians. That's how I will put it. So and Sydney is the destination for immigrants from Pakistan and India and other other Southeast Asian states as well. So you'll find, like, if you're during different festivities, like for example recently Eid, you will find a lot of different celebrations, festivals happening around Sydney. And you can meet a lot of other like Muslim brothers here. So and so I have a decent circle here. And there's no problem finding halal food here. and you can celebrate Eid very well. And actually, we yesterday, even till yesterday, Eid, although Eid has passed, a few weeks already, but we still are having some kind of functions. And yesterday, I attended one. So. And but one thing I want to comment here is it depends on your individual, the way of preferences. If you want to have a larger circle, it's not difficult in Sydney. There are you can have a very big social circle here, and you can have a very small circle here. It depends on your individual preferences how you want it to be. But if you want to intermingle and you want to develop a large social circle, it's very easy to do in Sydney. You will find uh, you know even if you, for example, people, some young guys, they want to play cricket and they want to find, find groups who are playing regular tape. We used to play tape ball cricket. So you can find a lot of groups here who play tape ball cricket and in different grounds around Sydney, and then you can make new friends here. So but the situation is different in, I will say, different capital cities. Melbourne is similar to Sydney. You will find halal food, and you can, like, for example, for different occasions, Eid celebration and other occasions, you can have a good time. But for example, I will say Perth, Darwin, Brisbane, the situation is a bit different there. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Ismail, thank you. Thanks a lot. This was a wonderful discussion with you. Wonderful talk. Learned a lot about Australia, which I didn't know. Probably others will benefit as well. Just one last question. Where can people reach out to you in case they have any question? They want to get in touch with you with regards to move to Australia and all. Where is that and how can they reach out to you?
I have a Facebook account, and I am active on LinkedIn. So currently, I am active on these two, social platforms. So if someone wants to reach out to me, I think these two will be the best avenues to approach me.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you, Smile. Thanks again. And we'll bring you more for further discussions on other topics on the podcast as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Veros.